show. October has arrived, which means it's time for the next square in our 2022 Totally Tunisian calendar blanket. This month we are going to learn the seed stitch. Look at that texture. I love this pattern. This pattern, like the rib stitch and the basket weave stitch that we learned previously, also alternates between the Tunisian knit and the Tunisian purl stitch. And like those other two stitch patterns, this one is just a classic. You really should have it in your repertoire because it's a great choice for projects of all sizes. Everything from the very large blanket side of the scale down to the very small dishcloth side of the scale. I love this. And I think you will too. But let's find out together. Let's grab our hooks, we'll grab our yarn, we'll head on over to the craft table, and we'll stitch it up together. In order to make our Tunisian seed stitch squares, we're going to use the same yarn we've been using all along for this blanket project. I'm using a size 4 medium weight acrylic. You want around 100 yards for the square in total. That breaks down to 90 yards for the main square and an additional 10 yards for the border on the square. You want a pair of scissors and a yarn needle. Your Tunisian or Afghan hook. This is a 5.5 millimeter, also known as an I or a 9, but for tension purposes you can use a larger hook if you need to. And I like to have the same size hook in a regular crochet hook, also a 5.5 millimeter. I like to switch back to a regular hook for the border since we're doing single crochet on the square. And I just find that a little bit easier to do. And once you've got all that together, we can get started. Please visit our shop and purchase a pattern. It helps support our show, and we'll put a link to our shop in the description box down below. As usual, I highly recommend making a little swatch of today's Tunisian seed stitch pattern. This seed stitch pattern was worked over 8 chains and is 8 rows tall, and I feel that gives me a very good idea of how the pattern is supposed to look overall. We're going to begin with a slip knot. And we're going to chain 38. The Tunisian seed stitch can be worked over any number of chains and any number of rows, but we're using 38 base chains in order to keep the same consistency with the rest of the squares in this series. The first row is a Tunisian simple stitch row by default. So this is the foundation row. We are going to pick up a loop in each of those 38 chains all the way across, remembering that the chain, or I should say the loop, that's left on your hook counts for that first chain. So you start picking up loops in the second chain from the hook, and in each across you'll have 38 loops at the end of your first forward pass. At the end of your forward pass, you'll have something that looks like this. You can unswirl it from around your hook. Count them up, you should have 38 loops on your hook, and the reverse pass is a standard reverse pass. It's also the same reverse pass we use for every row going forward. Yarn over hook, pull back through the first loop only. Yarn over, pull back through 2. Yarn over, pull back through 2. Yarn over, pull back through 2. All the way across, you'll be down to 1 loop left on your hook. Once you've finished the reverse pass, you'll have 38 simple stitches at the end of row 1, and you'll be left with a loop on your hook. This loop is now sort of counting as the first loop in our second row. It represents this stitch down here. It is by default a simple stitch, so the stitch pattern in every row actually begins in the second bar away from the hook. So every row we will begin by picking up a loop in the second bar. The seed stitch pattern consists of alternating between the Tunisian knit stitch, the Tunisian purl stitch. Knit, purl, knit, purl. On the next row, you'll begin with the purl stitch. Purl, knit, purl, knit. So every row you're alternating. You would knit into what was a purl stitch or purl into what was a knit stitch. And this constant alternating between knit, purl, or purl, knit is what gives us that really cute little bumpy seed-like effect. So here we go. We're going to knit the first stitch. So we're going to slip our hook right through the fabric. The hook goes between the front and back vertical bars right through the fabric. You sort of pick up a loop on your hook. The way you know that you've done it correctly is that you'll see that sort of little horseshoe effect that sits underneath the loop that you've picked up. That's a Tunisian knit stitch. And then we want to purl. So the yarn has to come to the front of your fabric. You can either pull it right to the front like this, or just sort of hold it like on the other side of your hook, whatever's comfortable. As you get comfortable with these stitches, you will find a nice way to hold that yarn. We are going to slip our hook underneath the next vertical bar. The working yarn crosses over top of that vertical bar. Then we yarn over hook and pick up a loop. I like to keep my thumb on that little crossed bit of fabric to keep it out of the way. It allows me to pull up that loop on my hook, and now you can see that little purl that is created underneath that loop. So there's our first loop. It's a simple stitch by default. We've created a knit loop and a purl loop. And now we start again. We knit into the next stitch and purl into the stitch after that. Knit, purl, knit, purl. Knit, hook goes right through the fabric between the front and back vertical bars, and you pick up a loop. There's that little horseshoe. Purl, yarn comes to the front. I either place it just on the front of my hook to keep it out of the way, or pull it right to the front. It's whatever is comfortable for you. Then you insert your hook underneath that vertical bar. Yarn crosses over top of that working loop. I like to keep my thumb on it. Pick up a loop, and there's your little purl. Knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. Once more, knit into the next stitch, yarn to the front, and purl into the stitch after that. So you're constantly alternating. It's really easy to see when you pull back a little bit which your knit stitches are and your purl stitches are. So your knit stitches will look like a really long loop, and your purl stitches will have like a little bump sitting right underneath that crossed yarn, right underneath your loop. You're going to repeat knit, purl all the way across to the end. You'll have 38 loops on your hook. I will catch up with you at the end to show you that simple stitch at the end. We're going to sort of end every row with the simple stitch just to keep it making things nice and even and balanced with the first stitch of the row. And then we will reverse pass and start row 2. When you get to the end of the row, after working Tunisian knit, Tunisian purl, Tunisian knit, Tunisian purl all the way across, you'll finish with Tunisian knit, Tunisian purl. You'll have one vertical bar left, it's this guy, and you're going to finish the row, every row in fact, with a simple stitch. So you can either just use that front vertical bar, pass your hook underneath it, pick up a loop, etc., or you can use both the edge vertical loops, and that just kind of creates this little running stitch. See this guy here? It kind of creates the same look going up the other side of the square. So you can put your hook through both of them, yarn over, pick up a loop, and that will create that running loop going up the other side. Count them up. You should have 38 loops on your hook, and you can start the reverse pass. Yarn over, pull back through the first loop only, yarn over, pull back through 2, yarn over, pull back through 2, yarn over, pull back through 2, nice and easy all the way back. At the end of row 2, or the first row of the seed stitch pattern, you'll have 38 stitches, and you can really see the knit, purl, knit, purl. So your little purl stitches have that little purl that sit underneath the front vertical bar. The knit stitches have a much longer front vertical bar. So that's an easy way to determine which is the knit and which is the purl stitch. For the next row of the pattern, the seed stitch row, we are going to invert what we were doing. So instead of going knit, purl, we are going to go purl, knit, purl, knit. So you purl into every knit stitch, you knit into every purl stitch. So we begin in the second vertical bar. This is already accounted for because of that loop left on the hook is already working for that stitch there. Yarn in front of hook. Hook is inserted into the front vertical bar of what was a knit stitch. Pick up a purl loop. The next vertical bar, this little short guy here, was a purl stitch, so we are going to knit into it. Hook goes directly through the fabric, pick up a knit loop in that purl stitch, and you can see that there's that familiar little horseshoe effect. Next, we're back to purling, yarn in front, pick up a purl loop. The next short stitch was a purl stitch, so we're going to knit into it. So hook right through the fabric between the front and back vertical bars, pick up a loop, there's that familiar little horseshoe, and so on. So you are purling into every knit stitch, knitting into every purl stitch. And that's what you're going to do all the way across to the end of the row. At the end of the forward pass of row 3 of the square, which is the second row of our seed stitch pattern, the last pattern stitch you'll end with is a knit stitch. That brings you up to the last vertical bar. That's this guy right here. And you want to simple stitch into that. So you can either use the front vertical bar, which is that, or use both edge loops, pick up a loop, and that will just have that little knit stitch or that little running stitch going up the other side too. So the last stitch of the row is always a simple stitch, and you will count them up, have 38 loops on your hook. The reverse pass is usual reverse pass. We will yarn over, pull back through 1 loop, yarn over, pull back through 2, yarn over, pull back through 2, all the way back until you have 1 loop left on your hook again. At the end of the reverse pass of row 3, or the second row of the seed stitch pattern, you'll have 38 stitches. You can clearly see that little seed stitch pattern starting. Purl, purl, purl. You're looking for all those little loops, those little bumps. Those are your purls, and your long front vertical bars are your knit stitches, and you can see them sort of in between. Long bar knit, long bar, or long bar purl, long bar purl. That little kind of pattern is what you're looking for, and it's going to alternate between rows. So a little purl will sit underneath a long vertical bar. There'll be purls on either side of them, and so on. The other way you can keep track of where you are, because you know you want to start every first row of the pattern is knit, purl, and every second row of the pattern is purl, knit, purl, knit. If you lose track of where you're at, or you can't decide, oh, like for example, this is the first stitch of the row. It's already used by that loop left on our hook. There's the next vertical bar. It's short and there's a purl underneath it. So I know that I need to start with a knit stitch. The bar right next to that is a really long one, so I know that's a knit stitch. So that tells me I go knit, purl, because I want to knit into the purl stitches and purl into the knit stitches. But if you're really lost or you can't tell what you're looking at, the other easy way to figure out where you're at is to count the rows along the edge of your square. That's row 1, row 2, row 3. Row 1 was the foundation row. That was all simple stitch, so you know that the seed stitch started in row 2. Row 2 began with a knit. Row 3 began with a purl. So as you work up the side, you can sort of say that's the foundation row and then knit, purl. Well, now I know the next row has to start with a knit stitch. So that's the other way you can kind of keep track of where you're at. And then that's all there is to it. You're going to knit, purl, all the way across, simple stitch to finish, reverse pass, then it'll be purl, knit, all the way across, ending with a simple stitch, and so on, all the way up. So that is all there is to the seed stitch pattern. Just remember to go slow. If you get sort of confused, just stop for a second, take a look at everything on your hook. That's the first loop, so I know that's a simple stitch. If I look at the side, that's the beginning row, so knit, purl. I should have started with a knit. There's a knit, a purl, a knit, a purl, a knit. I'm back to purl. Yep, that's a long knit stitch from the previous row, so I know I need to purl into it. So these are some of the tricks you can use to figure out where you're at. If you get confused or lost, or you have to put the stuff down for a little while, run off and grab the phone. That will help keep you on track. You're going to repeat this little pattern until you get to the end of row 31. And row 32, the last row of the square, we are going to do a row of simple stitch again, just to sort of mirror the bottom row or the foundation row of our square. So I'll see you at the end of row 31. I have completed 31 rows of the square. We've got 1 row left to do, so that's 1 row of simple stitch, 30 rows of the seed stitch where we alternate between knit, purl, and purl, knit, depending on the row you're on. And the last row, row number 32, we're going to do is just simple stitch all the way across. So loop left on your hook is using that loop there. We start the simple stitch by inserting our hook in the next vertical bar, picking up a loop, inserting our hook in the next vertical bar, picking up a loop, and we're going to do this all the way across. We'll have 38 loops on the end of our hook at the end of the forward pass, and then it's just a standard reverse pass on the way back. At the end of row 32, you'll have completed 38 simple stitches all the way across. If you're not changing colors in order to put on your border, chain 1 from this position and then wait. For the rest of us who are changing colors, we're going to snip our yarn, fasten off. You can leave the tail out and weave it in later or weave it in now. And you're going to grab your border color, and I'm going to switch back to my regular crochet hook. We're going to take our border color, make a slip knot. We're going to join our yarn with a single crochet in that first vertical bar. So if you are not changing colors, you are just going to single crochet into that first vertical bar after you chained 1. That's just to give you a bit of turnaround space. But for the rest of us, we are going to join with a single crochet. So I'm just going to work over top of that short tail. That's a single crochet in the first vertical bar. You're going to single crochet, regular old single crochet in each vertical bar all the way across the top of what was row 32. You'll have 38 single crochet all the way across the top when you get to the other side. That's 38 single crochet all the way across the top of our square. You're going to chain 1 to turn the corner and work the first single crochet of the side in the same vertical bar that you worked your last single crochet. So that just gives us a little corner. That single crochet becomes the first one of the side. You're going to have 33 in total. There are 32 rows of the square, and there is the foundation row down here at the bottom. So you will have 33 single crochet running down the side of your square. You're just going to grab the last vertical bar or the edge vertical bar of each row all the way down, single crocheting as we go. Single crochet number 33 is in the first foundation chain that we made. There's my little tail still hanging out there. We're going to chain 1 to turn the corner and single crochet into the same foundation chain. That becomes the first single crochet of the bottom row, or the bottom edge. We're going to single crochet in each of those foundation chains all the way across. You'll have 38 single crochet across the bottom of your square, and I'll catch up with you in the other corner. Stitch number 38 is worked into the last foundation chain. You're going to chain 1 to turn the corner, single crochet in the same place. It might be a little tight down there. And then we're going to single crochet in each vertical bar, so the front vertical bar of each of those stitches that runs up the edge. So the first one is right here. It's right next to your last single crochet. And then you're going to single crochet in each front vertical bar up the other side. You'll have 33 by the time you get up to the top, and your last single crochet will be worked into the same first vertical bar that you joined your border color in. There's where we joined our border color, right there in that first vertical bar. So stitch number 33 up my last side is going to be worked into the same vertical bar. Chain 1 to turn the corner and slip stitch to join to the top of that first single crochet. And I'm going to fasten off, weave in my tails, make sure I've got them all, and then I'm going to quickly block it to square up my square. That is my seed stitch square, all blocked and squared up. I used one of my other squares as the template. All of my squares are roughly 12 by 12 or 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters. And of course, final blocking will be done when all the squares are put together. The seed stitch. Absolutely love it. I did notice that about halfway through the build of the square, things sped up for me. I don't know whether that's because I got used to the alternating between knit and purl and knit, or if it's just because the weight of the square helped me control what I was doing a little bit better. I'd like to know what your experience with this particular pattern was. Let us know down below. And that's it for this week. We will see you soon here on the Jayda and Stitches show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, and have an awesome week. Bye everybody!
Hi everybody! Mr. InStitches here. Thank you for watching today. Here are some of our other videos you might be interested in. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.